So this transmission is called Be Ye Perfect, Even as Your Father is Perfect. And I'm going to talk about mastering the technique I gave you in the last workshop. I'm going to talk about why it's important to do it. And I'm going to give you a lot of insights in this transmission, so make the time. I think you're going to find it tremendously helpful in your walk.
I am of the pure mind of God. I am the resurrection and the life in my body, my finances, my relationships, and my world. I qualify everything in my world with perfection. I am perfection. I am this perfect day, and the life that lives in me is the light that cannot fail. I accept only God's perfection, His good, in my outer circumstances. I know in my heart that God is all in all. I am absolutely not concerned about what happens, because I know wonderful things are happening now.
Hey, welcome back to another sunny day in beautiful Sheboygan, Wisconsin. You can see this is where it's at for me. I don't really care to be in a building on lockdown. I mean, let's get real. Life is right here. It's always been here the whole time. So what is life? You know, is life full of ups and downs? Is life something that you have to preserve and watch out for because you might lose it at some point, and you know, you're capable of making a mistake that could end up costing you your life, and all of these ideas that go through our heads all day, every day. And people get caught in these life challenges. See, there's another idea. We add these things on to life, you see. It reminds me of what a derivative is. It's, you have something that's real, and then you add on some whatever, some superfluous, crazy stuff on top of it. So you have life. Life is a fact. Okay, it's like gold. Life is a fact, and your life is on a gold standard, because the standard of living from a fact is the actual life. Actual life versus what you think life is. So what you think life is a derivative. It's a derivative of a persona that comes from an ego. You see, it derives itself from a persona that comes from an ego, and it creates all sorts of reasoning for its own existence. So what is it? It's an idea. An idea. What is this whole universe? It's an idea in the mind of God. And you see this idea in the mind of God, just understand for 1 second, it is a construct of information, energy, and light. And it's all put together according to His plan, His motive, okay? So I'm going to get around to all this stuff. It's important that you follow with me. His motive. What drives every human behavior? What drives every act, every activity, every human motivation? What drives it? It's the pursuit of more life. Okay? It's a pursuit of more life. Seeking life. That's a nice little Porsche. Had a nice red interior. Just thought I'd go there. It's nice. So the pursuit of more life. The person who robs a bank is doing so because they're pursuing more life. They don't know that. They think they're pursuing more luxury, more freedom, more options, more power, etc. But what's really happening is they're pursuing more life. Because life seeks to expand within itself, within its creation. The law of expansion is forever there. Life seeking expression through us, expanding. That's why you come up with these ideas like currency, because we are allowing the current of the thought stream to flow through us. Again, what is the thought contained within? An idea. So everything is seeking more life. And then you have this derivatives market, this counterfeiting that goes on. And you're counterfeiting, well, it's not, I shouldn't say you, it's the mind of this world. What they call Satan. The mind of this world counterfeits everything that is factual with a derivative that is non-factual. It's the shadow version, the fiction self, if you will. So this fiction self moves through time, linear time, and it arranges its affairs in such a way that every perceived threat that comes along, it takes its own defense, its own counsel, puts up its own reasoning as its first and front line safety measures. Okay? So it relies on the safety of human ideas, and it engages with, the word reason should be called treason. Treason against God. Okay? Because the T is a box, it's a carpenter's square shape of a box, you see. It's also your cross right before the reason kicks in. And so what happens is, when you willfully act in disobedience to the Lord your God, a willful act of disobedience, what is put on trial is your willful act of disobedience. That is when what is known as Jehovah, that's the God of the ancient texts that brought about the calamities and the destruction, etc. Well, where do those happen? Those happen in the outer. They're all happening in the outer. And what does that happen for? It happens for good, because all is under the law of laws, which is the divine love principle. So divine love is the top of the pyramid, divine love. And then we go down from there. So divine love is the law of laws. So everything is guided by wisdom for his purposes and for his arrangement to bring things into the harmonic resonance of divine love. So at the end of the day, that's where everything is going, and that's what this will is always seeking. It's seeking more life, because life is divine love. Now, isn't it interesting that it goes about it in ways that are so cunning and so abstract and abject nonsense, really? It goes about finding its way through the labyrinth of the human mind, looking at the who, what, when, where, why, and how at every turn. See, it takes this willful act of disobedience at every juncture, every perception, every impression, every submersion into the outer through the persona. When the consciousness enters the outer through the persona and arranges its affairs through the construct of the human mind, who, what, when, where, why, and how, 6 degrees of separation, through the inner, middle, and outer kingdom, triangulating itself into its own downfall. So what you see is not, what you hear is not, because they're all coming from the derivatives market of life. They're coming from the record-keeping system of wrongs, and they are seeking to correct the wrongdoing, the debt, the balance sheet. You see, debt means sin. It's the equivalent of wrongdoing. It's the equivalent of punishment because of sin. The punishment of sin is the debt. It is the wrongdoing. Hold on, you got to see this. This is pretty cool. I don't know, can you see her up there? I don't know if you can see that, but girl up there is doing a hula hoop thing. It's pretty extraordinary. Whatever. It was cool. So the wrongdoing, okay, is seeking life through its own perspective lens of reasoning. An example of that is you get yourself in a whole series of conundrums throughout the course of your life that you call your life. It's really a life experience through a persona in a derivatives market. You're not playing with the facts, you're playing with counterfeiting. Okay, so you're in the counterfeit. You're in the counterfeit self. The self outside is the counterfeit. The self I am within is the fact. So when you step out and you look out to that which is not, and you hear from the outer that which is not, and you begin to build your record-keeping system, you begin to record the wrongs, then you come under the law of sin and death. And that law of sin and death is the law of destruction. So the God Jehovah will bring the law of destruction. Okay? And so that's what I want to talk to you about. And I'm going to go into the scripture with that because it was already queued up. I just have to find it. Let's see if I can find it. I opened right up to it. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. It's in the book of Nahum, and we begin in chapter 1, the book of Nahum. So by the way, I really appreciate you coming on this walk with me. You know, this is my way of honoring God, is I get out of my normal mind routine, you see, and I just step into the presence. You know, you can go for a drive, you can go for a walk, you can play music, you can work out, you can do whatever it takes to get yourself as present to the present as you possibly can. And what I mean by that is that you're not frazzled by what's going on out there. The temptation does not stir you into joinder with the outer. So as I'm walking here, the one thing that does come up is that people are everywhere, and so they pass me, and then, you know, things are going on. You know, I stop for the hula hoop, I stop for these things. Well, the minute I do that, you can lose your train of thought, they call it, the train of thought. So you miss the train, and where's the train always heading? It's always heading back to the station. So every thought always is trying to head back to the ground state, because it's all current flowing through an electrical, you know, bioelectric reality. And it's all flowing back to ground. Ground what? Ground zero. And what is a zero? Zero is the infinite. Okay, the infinite, the zero point. Ground state. And so we have all these thoughts mingling about. We have all this current flowing. And where is the current all going? Well, it's all seeking life. It's all seeking more expression. It's all seeking divine love. Because divine love is all there is. And therefore divine love beckons all unto itself. So everything is being led and steered and engineered in the way of divine love. But yet we tell different stories. We tell it how we see it, from the derivative, from the counterfeit version of life. That life through the record-keeping system of the 5 human senses. You see, it develops all of these file cabinets within its memory bank and its logic stick, and it starts to put all these files together, and it starts to keep track of all of these documented judgments. Okay, these are documented interpretations of reality. Again, go back to my series. His promises, his faithful promises are your armor and protection. Watch the first video if you didn't get that part, about how your interpretation makes all the difference. Your interpretation decides who you're being. You're either being the fact or the counterfeit. And who you're being decides what you put yourself under in terms of which law is operating in your life. The law of divine love operates through the Spirit, because the Spirit is life and sets you free from the law of sin and death. Okay? So inherent within divine love, inherent within all creation. Now get this point. Inherent within all creation is freedom. Freedom. Just think about that word. Really set your heart on meditating on that word for just one moment. What does it mean to you to be free? Remember in the series I talked about being as free as the wind in the final video, his true coded scriptures, whatever I called that thing. I am as free as the wind, okay? The wind is present, always. It is always present. It is always rooted in the now. It is always in the non-material, always the spirit. And it has to do with breath, it has to do with life. Right? Think about if you stop breathing, what happens? You die. What are you breathing? You're breathing air, they tell you. They tell you that you're breathing air. So what are you breathing? You are breathing the present of the present moment. In fact, if you would become so aware as to just put your attention on the single point of your breath and keep your attention there and draw it away from the external, from the outer, it will help you turn to the great presence I am within yourself and be still, because only by being still will you know that I am God. That's it. That's it. And that's when you come under the law of divine love. That's when you emerge as the factual version of yourself, rooted in the self-image of that which is real. There's not an ounce of life or intelligence in what we call matter, in anything material. So there's no life, no substance, no intelligence in that material construct. And where does it all come from? It all comes from the outer realm of this persona, this derivative that is willful in its disobedience. Okay, now that willful disobedience, the willful disobedience is the root cause of all suffering, and it is triggered by ignorance of the Father. So ignorance of the Father is the answer. It is the answer that you're seeking. Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening in my world? Why is evil always seeking to seize the day? I don't get it. I don't understand what happened. Where did we go wrong? I'm voicing to you opinions from the collective, from the mind of men, from the mortals that walk the earth as dust. They drop like empty dead carcasses to the dust too, because there's not an ounce of life or intelligence or substance in what you call that meat sack body. It is a dead carcass from the beginning, and therefore it can birth no life. Therefore it has no cause. And therefore the only consequence is also without root. It has no strength. It has no might. It has no life. Yes, I said it has no life. So what does that mean to you? I first asked you to contemplate freedom. I am not a body, I am free. There it is. I just put it out on the table for you. I am not a body, I am free. I mean, I can just see all of your five senses sitting at the table, and they're like, whip it out, big boy, show us what you got. And I'm like, I am not a body, I am free. Now they're all owned and incorporated, okay, by a body, okay? Get this. They are owned and incorporated by a body. That's why they're called corporeal five senses. Corpse is the word. Corpse, dead, tombstone, fiction, the world of the dead, corpses. That's why they have all these spin-offs of zombies everywhere, because they're showing you the truth, but you don't see it. Because you use language you don't even know what it means. Because you've been adulted along the way. Adult means corrupt. Adulterated. Get it? Adulterated. If your food's adulterated, it's corrupt. Well, your food is your spiritual ideas. Where are you getting them from? The mind of this world or from the mind of Christ? What does it take to set the captives free? Well, didn't Christ come to do that? Didn't he open the prison doors? Didn't he set the captives free?
Hello, I'm Shen with Allow Ministries. If you are new or just getting warmed up to this material, here's a great place to begin. Use the groundbreaking tools ABC Break Process, Safe Touch, and Self-Entrainment Technique. These are the original Spiritual Millionaire workshop trainings. Matthew David discovered these techniques being bedridden and bankrupt. To develop a 7-figure business and today train like a pro athlete. Within a few minutes, you'll receive the first technique, ABC Break Free, followed by the next one, Safe Touch, 5 days later. Lastly, you'll be invited to learn Matthew's most powerful skill set to shift the vibration. What he believes to be true is you can occupy parallel universes now. This technique is called self-entrainment. You'll be invited to be personally mentored by Matthew David to master this once-in-a-lifetime skill set. Look for that text to arrive in 10 days. Matthew David has streamlined the learning curve to offer you his best material for rapid life transformation at the pace that works. It's a 30-day investment in yourself to achieve the inner game of permanent abundance and vitality structured as daily techniques to build your life strategically on a solid foundation that prospers you for all your days. It's a legacy to learn, profit from, and even teach to your loved ones. To navigate an ever-changing world with timeless and changeless wisdom. Now, it's your turn to rise above your circumstances and prove that all power is within you. Now to the number below and begin your faster track journey to your best life ever. No matter what the outer circumstances seem to be, you can master your world. Starting now.
So what is Christ? Is it a man with a beard? Is that flesh and bone creature going to come out of another birth canal and incorpse itself into a 5-sense fiction and come through to the lying 5 human senses one more time in order for the drunk to catch a glimpse of what the eternal is? Well, that's what the Bible's for, because the Christ can come one more time in that way through the what? Where does it come? It comes in the imagination. So let's just cut to the chase and let's cut the BS. It's the imagination. Your living imagination is the Christ. Bam, there. I just dropped that one on the table too. So what are you going to do with it? Well, are you going to be a follower? Are you going to follow the Christ, or are you going to deny the Christ? Now let me tell you a little something. Follow. If something follows, what does it mean? It means that there's a continuation. So we're looking at in terms of making contract here with a divine law that can set the captives free. Because only a divine law can set a captive free. There's no freedom inherent outside of spirit, life, eternal, God, etc. Because there's nothing outside of that. ignorance of the Father is just that. It means that there is nothing outside of that. So there's no power to produce anything outside of that. There's no cause of consequence for any punishment either. So where's all this evil coming from? What if I told you there's no cause? What if I told you that it's not there? But yet you would argue for your limitation because you are so certain that the record-keeping system that you have from your 5 corporeal corpse senses have documented a reality that is built on a fact when it couldn't be further from the truth because it's coming from a derivative. It has no substance, it has no life, it has no intelligence, and it is of no fact. Therefore, it can contain no fact. It's an empty, dead carcass. All of it. All of it. Look outside in the person. Look outside in the outer. It's all empty. Now let me challenge you with this. 99.99997% of what you call matter is empty space. Huge fluctuations of energy dancing in a void of empty space like wispy fluff. Infinite worlds appear and reappear in the vast expanse of my consciousness like motes of dust dancing in a beam of light. You remember looking at the window when the light comes in and the dust particles are there, but you can see right through it and you can see the light. You can see the light penetrating through all of the particles of dust. That is what divine love and the law of God's adjustment is. It is a factual perception of how you never can lose sight of freedom that is inherent within spirit, because the light is all, and what is dancing in a void of empty space is nothing but dust that returns to dust. There is no matter. I'm going to let you sit on that for just a minute. But you don't get to experience the continuity of that perfection within yourself if you remain identified with the derivative. In other words, if you're holding in your hand that which has no value and you're trying to use it as legal tender, you may be denied because you have no proof of funds. So when you show up and you pray, and this is why there are so many people that say my prayers will not be answered, I just feel it's useless to pray. They use it as a last resort because prayer seems to be futile according to human reasoning. It seems to have of little effect or consequence upon one's world other than some erroneous belief that you can go to a guy with a towel on and a beard from another country and sit at the feet and get a transmission and become enlightened in a New York minute when you were enlightened to begin with. You see this little game that's been played on Westerners. Westerners are drunk. Westerners are very drunk because they're conceited with materialism. See, their blessing is their curse because they've had it so well for so long. They've become spiritually lazy to the point of being sluggards. Their strength in the spirit is not accessible because they are too attached to the derivative. And the whole currency in the outer, as within so without, you see, as within their hearts is what's happening without in their collective governance of themselves. And their entire superstructure is built on derivatives and fake fiat currency flow. And that's why it's collapsing, because it always follows that evil destroys evil. Error destroys itself. And so you're saying, well, Matthew, how does this apply to me? These are insights. I get this. This is cool, but I don't know what to do with it. Well, the first thing is you have to question all of these ideas that have no value. They have no authority to transact. Because if you're using these fiction derivative ideas based on coming from the persona and all of the record keeping that it has gathered through all of the misdeeds and judgments and sins, the debts of this world that it has taken on. Let me simplify that for you. Everywhere there has been time created in mind, time in mind, there is a debt-based economy underlying. And so as time is money, well, look at your persona, how it lives in the derivative of sin, and recognize that all of the record keeping of wrongdoings you have is rooted in time. It happened yesterday, it happened 5 minutes ago, it happened 3 years from now, it happens tomorrow morning. It always happens outside of this present moment, right now. Even if your head was getting chopped off in this present moment right now, if you were to become fully conscious of the present, then you would rise out of the dream. Because the part of you that dies never had an ounce of life to begin with. And yet you're so attracted to it, and you're so mesmerized by all of its data, all of its reasoning, all of its symbols and programming and pursuits, because of it lacks and it wants and it lusts for more power. You see, life is seeking more life. And what's happening is that circuit is running in series. And when you run in a series circuit, you are rooted in time. Therefore, you run on past, future, and you build your record-keeping events at every juncture of time. And so what you do is you store things in time capsules in your database. And every time you access time, you create a resistor along the series circuit where the current of life seeking more life flows. And that resistor is unconsciousness. What I mean by that is it is out of the present. It is, hello, get this, it is out of the present. It is ignorance of the Father. So the real record keeping that shows the true is when we take all of these incidents of consulting with the persona, consulting with the story that it tells of what it perceives to be real, and then opens its time capsules and swallows the drunk pill. All of these incidences build a collective, cumulative resistance in the flow of life, and that is the sum total of the ignorance of the Father that is operating in your perspective. Now, the big quantum calibration is when we shift to parallel, and we shift into parallel universe operating system. Now, how that works is that all realities exist in this moment at this focal point of now. All of them. There are many universes, many mansions in my Father's house, and you are going in and out of them simultaneously right now, because now is all there is, and now is grounded and rooted in divine love. And so we are grounded then. We are considered to be spiritually grounded when we can allow the thought stream to re-enter that ground state of divine love with the least amount of resistors along the circuit. And that's how parallel works. So parallel is presence within the present. Parallel is now, space, fact. Knowing that the spirit never had a birth date, it does not have a death date, it does not have an adversary, it does not have a life in flesh and bone. It never, ever takes on corruptibility because it is perfection. It is the very light between all of the motes of dust dancing as the nothingness, wispy fluff out there emerges and reemerges as the different parallel constructs that you are projecting from within your heart as your outer circumstances. And it's all happening right now in the light. And so what we want to do is we want to bring everything dark to the light, because that's how you return that which is of no value for the value. In essence, I want to take all of my IOU notes. You see, all of the record keeping that I've taken that is rooted in time, it's a derivative. That means it has no value because you can't continue the evidence of a fact outside of this present moment. So if it happened yesterday, if it happened 5 weeks ago, if it's going to happen tomorrow, it is outside of the fact, because the fact is now. And so you can't have the continuation of any evidence of any facts when it is rooted outside of now space. And so I take all of that garbage. I take all of those paper currency IOU debt notes and I trade them in for fact, for true substance, for authority, AU, gold. And I trade them in for gold. And you see, the mirroring aspect of this world has always reflected a gold standard. Nothing has ever changed. The gold standard is forever. Gold preserves the wealth. And wealth is always the sweat equity or the labor that is contained within the product. That's the same as Bitcoin. It takes the mining, it takes the sweat equity, it takes the consensus, it takes the agreement. That is the sweat equity, that is the value within the system. But it's all happening right now. And that's the world that has been emerging. And you see the patterns, the fractaling patterns that you see in the universe, they're happening through all of creation. The ascension is happening through all. So you see the money system is just the currency that overlays the thought stream that seeks to ground itself to the divine. See, the thoughts, which are the men of this world as well, because they are the thoughts of mortals, they have conceived themselves in their own image and likeness. And that's why when you go to the church, you see the flesh and bone, and they tell you that that's the Son of God, because those are the thoughts of men conceiving God in their own image. Blasphemy. So the whole world has been running on blasphemy in its ignorance. And the second coming of the Christ, is when the gold standard takes over the environment and it consumes everything within itself, just like the light that comes on in a dark room consumes everything within itself. And what is that gold standard? What is that gold? It is your I am presence within you. It is knowing that the outer is the fiction and that the inner is the fact. And it's the turning away from the lie and thereby bringing the Christ to the imagination, you see. You bring it off the cross and you bring it off the dead carcass sitting on a wooden, nailed up, pinned up version of some atom dream of consciousness that is a symbolic meaning. You see, the flesh dies to the 5 elements. The flesh dies to the 5 elements. That's the symbolic meaning. I trade in my 5 senses for my 5 elements. In other words, I trade in fiction for fact. I become the 0. Because anything that you multiply by 0 becomes 0. Imagine that. It's right in plain sight, it's math. And the whole universe operates as perfect as math. So what is the formula? Overlay the math and you'll see. I want to multiply everything by the 0. I want to bring every derivative back to its 0 point. So as we begin to contemplate these ideas, that this is the path, then we can understand that this is not a guessing game of whether God is going to come help us or not. Because now we're looking at it from the understanding of finding something permanent. Oh, this is too cute. Oh my gosh. Those girls were super cute. Anyway, to bring every derivative back to the 0, what you're seeing symbolically is you're seeing gold, silver, and Bitcoin, and things that have true intrinsic value. They have utility, fungibility, store of wealth, transferability, divisibility, all these things. Okay? They're all true stores of wealth. And so, you yourself are operating as a derivative, and you can bring you and exchange all of these problems and debts that you've accumulated in the world and receive a full pardon from being sentenced to the punishment of this world. Satan is the prince of this world, and the institutions of power are Satan's pulpit. So to look to this world to save you is nonsense. So we want to bring you back to the 0.
Hello, I'm Julie with Allow Ministries on behalf of Matthew David Hurtado. Are you ready to end self-sabotage, procrastination, and distraction? Clarity, certainty, and a proven plan of action is what it takes to get anything you want in life. Training is the answer. Matthew David Hurtado's Spiritual Millionaire Workshop is the one-step solution that finally puts you in control of your destiny. What Matthew discovered about building a 7-figure business and perfect well-being when he was bedridden and bankrupt with Lyme disease is that mentorship is success without the wait. It works. At allowuniversity.com, you'll discover how to walk in victory. Learn how to prosper in every area with unstoppable daily habits and a step-by-step training to build your dream business immediately following the event, a success training for a lifetime of achievement. Walk in financial increase, living a life you love. Go to allowuniversity.com and say yes to your destiny.
So when you meet somebody for the first time, your subconscious, your unconscious reasoning is always wondering, is this person trying to go long on me or are they trying to short me? You know what I'm saying? And they might even have a bet on both ways when they meet you. In other words, let's say you meet a partner and you're thinking, wow, this one's, this is a good looking one right here. You put a bet on them. You know what? I'm going to put an immediate short on this one and I'm going to put a long on there just in case. So in essence, you begin with your one night stand. And, if it goes south, well, then you call your short and then you think you came out ahead because you cut your losses, right? You cut your potential losses and you came out ahead. But you meet somebody who's a real knockout and you're like, well, you know what? I'm going to go long on this one. I'm going to go long on this one. And I think that this thing's going to go all the way to the wedding ceremony. And I think this is a permanent keeper. But, I'm also going to throw this short down here just in case, this goes south for an extended period of time. Here's my short. Here's my back out strategy, right? You see, these are just attitudes that reflect what happened in the markets. What happened in the markets are happening in the minds of people. They happen in the mind of people. So what you can see is the market manipulations and the market movements. Everything that happens in the markets is all just an outpicturing what's happening in the collective mind of mortals. And look how they are acting now that a fact emerges. Now that a fact emerges. Well, that's why they call Bitcoin the people's money, because it's a way for the people to experience engaging with a fact. They get to engage with a fact. If they make a mistake, they can't get their money back. If you send your Bitcoin to a false wallet, or if you lose your seed, you're not going to get it back. You're not going to be able to call your daddy and say, listen, I made a boo-boo. Make me whole again. Listen, daddy, I made a boo-boo. Make me whole again, right? Think about that. That's what they do in the church. That's what they do in the church. They go in the church and they get on their knees and they say, listen, daddy, I made a boo-boo, make me whole again. And that's what they do also in their their pocketbooks. And then it's up to the discretion of that overruling power whether they're going to make you whole again or not. And see, then we carry that forward to our attitude towards prayer and we say, well, this is how we're used to things playing out, so I don't know whether I'm going to be made whole again or not. It's going to be up to the mercy of someone else. And what that is the projection of ignorance through human emotion. Okay? It's the projection of ignorance through human emotion, and it outpictures itself in your world. But what does a fact do? Well, when you engage with a fact, then what you do is you find yourself being a sovereign. You find yourself as a sovereign. So what is God? What is the fact of God? God's sovereign. So to have the state of being sovereign, the state of being sovereign is the attitude that expresses itself as the real you, self-leading, sovereign. You become a law unto yourself. But you see, that takes responsibility. That takes a lot of, it takes 100% responsibility. Let me just put it out there. 20% is not going to cut it. Okay? What you're saying is I'm 80% BS and 20% ready to take responsibility for my life. Well, if you're not ready 100%, then guess what? Then you're going to get more of the derivative crap, because you're sold on buying derivatives. And you're going to be going through a market of interactions and exchanges with other minds that are mingling. And they're going to be longing you and shorting you. And the unfortunate thing about that marketplace is that you better keep your dreams to yourself, because if you start to tell others, they're going to short you. They're going to be placing bets on you shorted. And that's going to influence the market, because there's going to be a huge wall of pressure, just like what you see in the markets. There's going to be a huge wall of pressure. And that's going to drive your value down so that they can be collecting on you being shorted. Do you understand? Do you see it now? You see how it's staring you right in the face? Everything is staring at you right in the face. It's whether or not you want to embrace it. That's what it takes to be 100% responsible. The whole thing is saying, hey, this is here for you if you want it. But it's up to you. Because if you make a boo-boo, you're not going to be able to go sit down and beg for daddy to help you. That doesn't work. And not many people are ready for that, because they plan on making another boo-boo. In fact, they derive their whole living off of that, and they profit off of the boo-boos that everyone else makes. And they've got so many positions on shorting everyone around them, because they know that they're all operating from the same boo-boo mindset, that they're just waiting to cash in. They're betting on each other's downfall. Now, occasionally you find somebody that goes long on you. Usually that's somebody who truly has been sent from God, an angel, a messenger in your life. And they go long on you, because that's what divine love does. Divine love always goes long because, well, it doesn't have an adversary and it doesn't have an opponent. Therefore, it is expression of itself within itself, expanding forever. So it's always going long. And so you get to say, well, okay, which markets do I want to be in? Oh, isn't that just the question of the day, isn't it? Which markets do I want my currency to be in? Do I want to be in that counterfeiting market where everything could be seized, or I have to beg the mercy of some overseer whether or not I'm going to have my own? Am I going to trust that the value will be there? And what am I trusting in? What am I trusting in? Where is this thing called government? Where is it? I have never seen it. I'm looking for it all the time. Is there some sort of person I can contact? Oh, it's an idea. Oh, that's right. It's an idea of external governance. And so to be governing anything means you have to have some authority, means you have to have some ruling power. And where is that being derived from? It's being derived from a law of sin and death. And so what I want to ask you is, if you're going to keep placing your bets on the value of your future, what you call your future, which is nothing more than your present condensed into a different vibrational harmonic, if you think it's going to get better or worse, that's you placing a long or a short on yourself. And maybe you've got both. Maybe you're like, well, you know what? Here's my plan if I go long. I got my eyes set on this place, and I'm going to probably live here, and I'm going to buy this, and I'm going to do that, and then I'll have this, and then I'll have that, and then. Then you've also got this short, well, if the worst happens, I'm probably going to go do this, and then I'm going to have to do that. And so you've got positions held on yourself too. But what I want to really ask you, though, is, what if you didn't have to do any of that? What if you didn't have to even have that thought? What if you never had to have any ounce of that willful interpretation based on a linear thought progression in time. What if you didn't have to operate from that level anymore? What if you didn't have to run in series and be unconscious all the time? Could you handle it? Could you take on that responsibility? In other words, that ability to respond to what comes at you without engaging your reasoning. How are you going to respond to what comes to you without gauging your reasoning? It's simple. It's to turn everything that comes to you in, to turn it in. Turn it in and let it be qualified. Let it be qualified. Validate it. Make sure it has authority. Okay, let me give an example. Watch this. I am walking through time and space in my person right now. In other words, my consciousness has objectified a physical body that is moving at about 3.5 miles per hour, crossing a bridge. I feel the wind on my senses. It's nice and cool. I see people driving, walking. Now these are records I'm taking in. Okay, I'm scribing these. I'm taking in data. Okay, now that's becoming present to take that data in. Okay, that's present moment data. But now let me go off into the derivative. I wonder what's going to happen to that person I heard that bad news about. Geez, I wish I could have done more to help. I just don't know what's going to happen from here on out with all of this pandemic thing, and I wonder what I'm going to eat for dinner tonight, and on and on and on and on and on. Because you've been learned in the ways of this world, you have been taught to consult the reasoning mind, which has drawn you into a series circuit and taken you through all of its unconsciousness and the willful disobedience of the Lord your God. Because as soon as you begin to take thought for your life, you have just signed the contract with the law of sin and death. You have just become joined with it. Jesus didn't make a suggestion that you should take no thought for your life. That's a commandment. In other words, stop identifying as the derivative unless you want to be subject to the eternal consequence and punishment of that derivative, self. And here you thought David Icke was going to give you the mysteries to the world. Because, they're going to bring him back one more time. We're trying to figure out what's going on in the world. He seems to be the Messiah of the modern times. It's no man is going to be your Savior. I'm sorry, but if you go and hang him on the cross, or me or anybody else, then you are no better off than you were to begin with. Because you're still looking out there. If you haven't learned how to bring everything to the zero, then let me just share with you how to do that right now. Now, the way to do that is to become present to the present. I am conscious of what I am perceiving through my person. But because I am aware of that, in this moment, I am the presence that is aware. Now, from this perspective, I bring everything to the great I am within and qualify it with perfection. Now, the visual for this is that whatever is ignorant of the Father, in other words, whatever I see happening through my five senses, I switch on the lens to know that it is like the motes of dust dancing in a beam of light, and I want to bring the light into my awareness as the fact. I bring the light in as fact and know that the wispy fluff is nothingness. Now at this point, this is when I want to engage with my supernatural ability. And you only have two supernatural abilities. And that is what you speak and what you imagine. So at this point, I qualify everything by speaking and imagining it as already perfected as the good in my life. So I want to make it like the miracle where Christ filled the stony water pots with the finest wine. That's symbolic. Stony water pots is your perception of this world in a way that brings you barrenness of good, lack of joy in your heart, broken peace in your heart. You break the continuity of the good. See, you've stepped into the unconscious. You've stepped into ignorance. You are in time. You are breaking the continuation of the evidence of good in your life. See, you fell off the page because the words on the page are a court, and the real court is the words on the page, on the same plane, on a level playing field. And so I bring everything on the plane, on the level playing field, as the equal to what God is knowing to be true about God. And I qualify my outer with that knowledge. So I look to the outer, and whatever is troubling me, I say, I qualify everything in my world with perfection. I am divine perfection. And then I bring the light. I bring the light. I bring the presence of now that bears the light. I bring the presence of now. Pure awareness is the light. Pure awareness is the light. When you bring pure awareness after speaking the word of qualifying it in your world into the present moment, and then you come to a place of rest in your heart where you are at peace, then you have made the continuation of evidence. Christ is the Prince of Peace, the Father is the Father of peace, so therefore the peace remains. Be still and know that I am God. And I let the God part of me qualify my world, my I am within, not my human will, because that is the direct willful disobedience to the Father, to take the burdens of life upon yourself. And that is how you have cast yourself into the pit of slavery in Egypt. So I bring forth today to you the bread of life, telling you how to part the Red Sea and to walk in your paradise, the kingdom that is within, perfecting itself, because it knows nothing unlike itself. And it's so simple that you have to be an adult to mess it up. So that is what you do.
Are you feeling embarrassed and stuck because you can't focus or concentrate? I have a confession to make. I spent years unable to think clearly, like I was in a fog. I was going through the motions, running my companies, and I hated feeling groggy and mentally sluggish. I couldn't get ahead like this. It's no secret, the powers that be want us dumbed down. Chemicals, fluoride, our brains are under siege and we are experiencing lower IQs. But now there's a weapon to fight back and win. Introducing DNA Evolve, a revolutionary breakthrough in a category of cognitive enhancers called nootropics. I've been using DNA Evolve and couldn't feel better. For me, it works. It feels great to get things done again and get ahead. Try a free sample for yourself at DNAEvolveSample.com. That's DNAEvolveSample.com. Supplies are limited, so go to DNAEvolveSample.com right now.
So let's read some scripture. Let's go into the Word. And I unfortunately have a tear in the page, so bear with me, okay? And the wind is blowing. The Spirit is moving, so here we go. Nahum 1, an oracle concerning Nineveh. The book of the vision of Nahum the Elkoshite. The Lord's anger against Nineveh. It's called the Lord's anger against Nineveh. Okay, so here we have, this is the God where we talk about Jehovah, the one that brings about the destruction. So, anger, wrath, all these things, right? Well, why? What would a good God be doing like that? Well, to bring down that which is not, in order for that which is to be perfected. That's why. The Lord is a jealous and avenging God. The Lord takes vengeance and is filled with wrath. Ooh. Imagine that. The Lord takes vengeance on his foes. Okay. So we know that this God, this is Jehovah, this God is full of wrath and takes vengeance. But on who? On his foes. Now you might say, well, I'm not God's foe. I mean, shoot, you don't got to smoke me. I'm fine. I'm listening. Well, what I'm telling you is, well, we got to find out who his foes are. Well, I'll just give it to you. It's the mortals of the earth. It's the ones who are not the representation of that which is perfected. The ones who walk in sin and ignorance and willful disobedience and take thought for their own life and at every turn sin. See, the flesh at every turn sins. At every opportunity the flesh sins, period. Okay, and maintains his wrath against his enemies. So there we go. So now we have this standard. We have a standard that this God is a vengeant God, full of wrath, and maintains the wrath, which means it's a construct, it's a permanent, it's like a math equation. The Lord is slow to anger and great in power. The Lord will not leave the guilty unpunished. Guilty. Guilty. Well, how do you take guilt? If you're the representation of the image and likeness of God, and therefore the ray that worships the sun, how can you be anything unlike the sun? Is the sun guilty? Never, not for 1 minute. So how do you become guilty? By blocking the sun. How do you block the sun? Well, you have to step into another covering. You have to step out of the light. Well, how are you going to get out of the light if you're part of it? That's the big conundrum, isn't it? Which part of you is the light? Which part of you is out of it? Well, look at what you are. You're an idea in the mind of God. Now, God's foe and God's enemies, we could also say in another language of what God knows to be true about himself is forever maintained as a constant, as in like 2 + 2 = 4. It's a fact. It's constant. And if you bring 2 + 1 = 4 into the equation, that would be like the foe of math, and it would be maintained that it would be eradicated permanently at any time that it tries to enter a fact. And so that's why when you bring a gold standard to any sort of fiction and you bring the gold into your environment, it starts to perfect everything around itself. Well, gold is AU, it means authority, it means that which is factual. And so the factual you, it is the factual you that destroys the part of you. This is all between you and you. So this whole story here is about you and you. That's the part you may have missed. His way is in the whirlwind and the storm, and clouds are the dust of his feet. He rebukes the sea and drives it up. He makes all the rivers run dry. Pretty cool. Rebukes the sea and dries it up, makes all the rivers run dry. What does a sea look like? Sea is where you have current sea, you have flow. You have flow. Liquidity, money flow. What do you have? Thought streams, you have flow. Sea, maritime law, mind, the movement of thought. The ship vessels, those are the mortals floating in a sea of space. And they're floating on the sea. It's ideas, floating, minds mingling. He makes them run dry. What is the dry state? Lack of liquidity, lack of spirit, lack of life. Empty, void. If your cup is dry, it is void. He makes all the rivers run dry. Bashan and Carmel wither, and the blossoms of Lebanon fade. The mountains quake before him, and the hills melt away. The earth trembles at his presence, the world and all who live in it. Who can withstand his indignation? Who can endure his fierce anger? Well, it's basically telling you here the entire world is an empty, dead carcass because it's all being derived from a corporeal sense of self. And that corporeal sense of self is the target for the wrath and anger of the Lord. It's the law of sin and death. His wrath is poured out like fire. The rocks are shattered before him. But then it makes this sudden turn. Wait a minute. It says the Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. What is this, split personality going on here? No. It's a good thing if 2 + 2 = 4, and it destroys everything unlike itself because it brings about that which is perfect. He cares for those who trust in him, but with an overwhelming flood he will make an end of Nineveh. Corruption, an overwhelming flood. So when you bring a fact into the present moment and you qualify everything with a fact, that turning over of your responsibility, see, the way to become fully responsible is to become fully present to the present and allow that which is life, a fact, to become your life. And therefore you bear all within yourself, and then you qualify it. You don't create time. You don't create fiction. You don't create opinions. He will pursue his foes unto darkness. Okay, so he will pursue his foes unto darkness. Now I got to get up. And I need to relocate for just a moment. And I want to talk about this darkness. Darkness, lack of light. So it's saying here he's going to pursue that which is void of light. So we know that in the ancient Gnostic Gospels it says he sent his Holy Spirit, that's the tongue of God, he sent it to pursue those who were beguiled, stuck in the middle place. In other words, pursue them even unto darkness. What else does it say? Whatever they plot against the Lord, he will bring to an end. Trouble will not come a second time. They will be entangled among thorns and drunk from their wine. Okay? So he's talking about the mortals out here. He's talking about the ones that are living through the carnal sense of reality, recording all of these blasphemy ideas. In other words, they're looking to the world out there of fiction and they're bringing it all in based on time, and they're putting it in front of the Lord, the Holy Spirit, and they're saying, this is true. This is true. And God's saying, that's drunkenness, that's lies. I'm going to bring destruction to that. I'm going to destroy every one of those constructs. They will be consumed like dry stubble. From you, O Nineveh, has one come forth who plots evil against the Lord and counsels wickedness. Okay. From you comes one who plots wickedness. What comes from you that plots wickedness? The false sense of self. I've been talking about this whole video. The one that takes thought for its own life and has willful disobedience to the Lord. That is an act of will against that which is eternally good. It's at war with itself. This is what the Lord says. Although they are unscathed and numerous, they will be cut down and pass away. Although I have afflicted you, O Judah, I will afflict you no more. Now I will break the yoke from your neck and tear your shackles away. The Lord has given a command concerning you, Nineveh. You will have no descendants to bear your name. Okay, a descendant is something that comes from. Okay? So there's no cause. See, the Lord is saying there's no cause from out there. The persona can add nothing or take nothing away from the Lord. So if you produce something out of ignorance, then you have a descendant from ignorance, but the Lord's saying you're not going to be able to have that anymore. That means you have to be of the pure mind of God. It's saying you're going to be purified by the fire. You will have no descendants to bear your name. I will destroy the carved images and cast idols that are in the temple of your gods. I will prepare your grave, for you are vile. Do you understand what I'm saying here? That's all I need to read right there. This is the law of destruction. And that which is corrupt destroys itself. This is between you and you, the Lord. This is between you and you. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to qualify everything, and you're going to want to walk in the present of the presence, or the presence of the present, whichever way you want to say it. And you want to qualify everything with fact. If I see a ship come blow up right here in the lake, I'm not going to observe anything other than the good that is ever present, always perfected. And I'm going to qualify that in my world by saying, I demand and I am the perfecting presence of the pure mind of God here in this moment. And you see, I called on the Lord. I used I am. I called on God, the name of God, I am. I spoke. That's all God did in the Bible was speak. So I'm using my power. This is my power. Now I'm qualifying it through the imagination by using my imagination to know that everything is spirit, not matter. And that matter has no descendant. It has no cause. It has no root. It has no authority. So it cannot operate outside of God's perfect harmony. And therefore I use my conscious awareness to be present to the present and observe everything free of judgment, knowing that God contains all within itself, and it is always the light that is perfecting all. And this is really just the number 2 pattern. Again, another talk about the number 2 pattern in my 3-2-1 prosperity formula. So just to summarize it, MatthewDavidHurtado.com, go to my website, 3-2-1, number 3 is seed sowing and tithes. Honoring God and sowing seeds. These are how you operate from the realm of summer to the winter. In other words, you plant in the summer, you reap, that's how you do it. You plant in the winter, you reap in the summer. So you go in the world of winter, which is the world out there, through your persona, and you give, you plant. You plant, you plant. And in the realm of summer, in the Eos, you receive it. Okay, it comes through. It comes through the Spirit. It's brought back unto you. What you give comes back. Simple. So simple. You need money, you give money. You sow it to where you're making contact with God through faith, through a covenant. That's contract. You're trusting. Then you do number 2. All of the things I said today, you qualify everything, you perfect it, you walk free of the resistance that pulls you into unconsciousness, that causes you to be willfully disobedient to the Lord, your God. And you remain present to the present, in the victory, in the glory, in the good. And then number 1, you follow the fastest path to your joy in every moment. You see, there is action. Yes, you will plant seeds of action, but you're going to follow the joy. You're going to maintain the continuity of the strength of the Lord, your God. That's your compass. You're going to stay in the continuation of the evidence of good in your life. And in order to do that, you have to follow the fastest path to your joy in every moment. Otherwise, you're breaking the continuation of evidence of God in your life, because there's no strength in your life anymore if you don't have joy. And this way you operate. And when you do this, you're in the mechanics of receiving the kingdom that's at hand right now. So big talk, big shout out to number 2, the lesson number 2 today. That's where we went. Because we don't want to be on the wrong side of that wrath and that punishment, because then we get to experience all of those judgments come upon ourselves that we've laid. We lay these booby traps by making these perceptions and this reasoning. That's the disobedience. That's the wicked one of this world. That's not you. You've never been that person. You've been innocent and free the whole time, as a reflection in the image and likeness of God in this present moment, perfected by the light. Return to that. Be the prodigal son, return home. Because it's a permanent maintenance thing. It's a fact. It means it doesn't waver. So therefore you don't have to say, Daddy, I made a boo-boo. Make me whole. Because all you're doing is you're saying, bring me back to that which is, because I'm in ignorance right now. That's how you heal. That's how you solve money problems. That's how you do these things. Because you know there's no problem. There has never been a problem. God never got defeated. God's not broken. Oh my gosh, is God defeated by your utility bill? Well, there was a lot of times that I thought I was. I'm telling you, that person's going to get wrecked. That person's going to get wrecked. Just so you know, that person's going to get wrecked. You have to let go. This is it. This is not role play anymore. This is live. We're in a live training event right now. This is real. Okay? The destruction of wickedness is happening right now, so don't take sides with wickedness. It's not worth it. You'll be consumed by the fire fast. Take sides with perfection. Be the perfection. Be the light of the world. You're supposed to feel perfection in your heart. You're supposed to see perfection in your world and be the light of the world. And the only proof that you got this is through your words, so pay attention to what you're saying. Okay, I'm back for another session. Took a break, went inside for a while, and now I'm just going to walk again, because that's what you do when the world shuts down, is you just keep moving. Just keep experiencing your joy and the fullness of God's grace. That's what you do. So, I guess I'm going to try to do the impossible here. Oh Lord, why do I put myself in such a predicament where I believe that there is an error whatsoever? Why do I do this? See, according to my human reasoning, there's an error that occurred in someone's life who appears in my world. Let's just put it that way. And so this person is experiencing a less than fortunate situation right now. And it looks pretty scary on the human surface. You know, but here's the deal. I'm not going to go out there not going to go out there and try to do anything other than follow the fastest path to my joy, because that's the seed that I want to create. So if I go follow some sort of emotional distress and I pursue it with the seed of dropping more emotional distress, then I've caught myself in a turbulent wake that's going to rock my boat quite heavily. So instead, if you ask anything in my name, then my Father, which doeth the works, will give it to you, right? Jesus said that. Wow, Jesus was so smart. So what would Jesus do right now? Well, what did Jesus do? Jesus died for the sins of mankind. You could say man unkind and be more accurate, but Jesus died for the sins of what we call the sons of men. Okay? So the Son of Man died so that the Son of God could be resurrected. So die to your former self. If you want to be like Jesus, then die to your former self. So I need to die to that wisdom. Die to the old way of seeing the world. So the part of me that brought the trouble, remember the record-keeping part, said, oh, there's a person in your world and they're going through a really bad challenge right now. They're having a really hard experience and they're crying out for help and do something. Right? You've been there before, haven't you? And maybe that person shows up all the time in your world and plays on the heartstrings, and you just want more than anything for that person to just find the life divine, the kingdom that is at hand. But yet they're not doing it. Well, the only thing that you have, remember, is this full responsibility. And I'm actually doing this live for you with full responsibility here. So according to my human standard, I could say, well, who's going to help this person if I don't do it? What's it going to come down to? What's it going to take? How much? How long is it going to be? Where's the argument that's going to win this thing? All this stuff, right? Okay. Well, many of those areas, my human perspective is far too underqualified to enter. Okay. But the good news is I can follow Christ. I can follow the wisdom.
I didn't do it if it's wrong.
What's that? Oh, no, you're good. You got cookies, though.
I did.
Well, that's very right. So you're on good terms with me. So you follow Christ, a follower of Christ. What is truth? Follower of truth. Okay, so what is the truth that God knows to be true about all of his sons and daughters? That they are impeccable in their ways. They are immune to affliction. They are free eternally. This is life in the garden. Life in the Garden of Eden. Before they took of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that life was supplied. That life was already given. So I'm going to witness that fact. Remember, we've been talking about facts versus the derivative. This is how you produce a healing for someone else, because there is no one else. It's your consciousness coming to be corrected. So I'm going to come in front of the pearly gates, and I'm going to bear my sacrifice. Okay, so that sacrifice is going to be my former self. This is the law of sacrifice I've talked about many times. I'm going to lay down my mortal sense of understanding. Remember? What did Jesus do? Do what he did. He died to his former self. So I die to my former self daily, moment by moment, in fact. Die to your former self moment by moment. And that allows you to stay present to the present. So now I'm going to contemplate what God knows to be true about this person with trouble. That this person with the trouble is not the creation of God. So this is ignorance, and it's calling to be qualified in the light. It's coming up from within me to be qualified in the light of truth, because all is God, and God is all. And there's not an ounce of ignorance in the mind of God. So I am God's perfect law of harmony and adjustment. And I am the freedom that is inherent within spirit. And this is demonstrated in my world, in my outer. See, I don't have to choose sides. It's not about me and this other person. There's no difference. There's no differentiating point where I leave off and they begin. And vice versa, because there is no sense of separation in truth. So I'm dropping that altogether. That died on the cross. I'm in the resurrected state of the living Christ, not the dead Jesus, not the dead man of sons of men. Not that one. I'm not that person. So now I imagine the harmony, the perfection, the joy, the smile, the divine love, filling every space like I'm looking under a microscope and I'm looking at all of the dust particles that my five senses have picked up as this other person that has come to me in order to be healed in my consciousness. You see what I'm doing? I'm using Superman-like X-ray vision to see what is truly there and not the lie standing before my human eyes. The obstruction is removed. There is no carnal meat sack person who carries a story outside of his story, outside of his continuity of perfection, the light that bears no darkness. I repeat, the light that bears no darkness has no opposite. So now, as my human reasoning brings forth the archetype image of the troubled person, I turn within and I turn it over to God. I am the resurrection and the light. And I am witnessing the light fill all in all within every pocket of my consciousness, not out there, my consciousness, that has brought forth this trouble for my mind. The trouble is in my world when I make claim that there is trouble in my world. So what I am doing is I am bringing in all of the derivative, and I'm exchanging it now for the fact. Jesus never healed a soul. He saw them as whole, already perfected, with not an ounce of error that could possibly find its way in or take lodgment in God's perfect expression of harmony. And that is the Christ. That is the truth, that is the setting free of the captive. Because the captive is no different than having a captive insurance policy on a company. It means it is held in a trust. It's a captive corporation, a captive corpse. So what is that corpse held captive in? In the light. We are all children of the light. So I bring that captive corpse and I bring it into the continuation of good by witnessing the wisdom that is in the perfected light of the pure mind of God, the Christ. And I hope I'm not getting too esoteric for you, because this is very simple. I'm just sharing with you the simplicity. It's not what I'm saying to you, it's what I'm engaging with. I'm engaging with peace in my heart, the kind of peace that says I am not concerned for anything because God is all. And this is a feeling place. And this feeling is what is adjusting in the dial for the frequency that I am stepping into. Notice when the trouble came, and you may have had trouble in your life, when it comes to you, it is coming to you as a misqualified energy. It's a distorted frequency. It's like chaos electricity. And so it's seeking to ground itself, but it's trying to operate outside of the conduit of good. And if you touch this chaos electricity, well, it can fry the meat sack pretty quick. So all I'm doing is providing the ground state, being the grounded one, rooted in a fact. That's what it means to be grounded. I'm rooted. I have roots. I'm standing firm. That's a contract. I'm being firm. Confirmation. I am witnessing the confirmation and allowing that to set into my heart. It is of no use until it gets into my heart. Once I am certain in my heart that all is well and God is all, then indeed I have made the correction in my consciousness. Notice I didn't try to change the outer. I didn't try at all to do anything on the outer. I brought it all within to qualify it with perfection. That's the secret. And then as long as I stay firm in my confirmation, rooted in fact, bearing the fruit of wisdom, then the misqualified ignorance in my world is destroyed. You have more power than you can even comprehend, because your human self can't even bear an ounce of that power. But when you're willing to die to your former self daily, moment by moment, and let it go to the divine, and to let God be all in all, And most importantly, feeling that sense of perfection in your world. That is the most important part. As the late Reverend Ike said, well, he wasn't late, he was actually before his time. So how do you like that? And he seems to be right on time. So as Reverend Ike says to you right now, the feeling gets the blessing. You meditate on these things until they become anchored. You're anchoring your ship. You want to anchor your ship. So that you can be on solid ground, terra firma. So that's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing. I'm actually taking you with me. I'm actually doing this for some misqualified situation that showed up in my world. And so for the first few hours, I sat and racked my brain, which is the absolute wrong thing to do, over all of the human things that were potentially possible. Well, I could use money, I could use influence, I could use whatever. Pointless, completely useless. Because now that I've adopted a position of duality, I've also taken into the intermediary position the conflicting minds that are at war with one another. So now I'm in a myriad of possibilities based on corruption feeding into more corruption. So now I'm in an abyss. I'm in the labyrinth of the mind. And that becomes a very confused place to be. Anybody who's been through legal battles, lawsuits, etc., well, you're going to realize that all of this fighting, all of this dishonor, because it's always dishonor that equals loss. Whenever you have a loss, you can trace it back to some sort of dishonor that happened. And that's why the commandments were scribed in the box. The Ark of the Covenant, the first 4 about loving, honoring God, and the second part, the 6, were about others. Same thing. Just being love back and forth in your world. Coming from the love and continuation of evidence of the love in your world. That's what it all says. And that's why the pure gold over the top, you see, that's the covering, that's the covenant, that's the pure mind of God. And so that pure mind of God, when it was exposed, it would kill the mortals, even when they looked at it, because they are the willful, disobedient sons of men that are not the children of the light. And that's the secret of the Ark of the Covenant. So whenever there's loss, there's dishonor that you can associate that was directly tied into the moments leading up to the loss. It's the continuation of the sin and the consequence of the sin. And at every turn, the flesh mortal self is sinning. It doesn't stop.
Hey, it's Matthew David, the Minister of Allowing. So let me tell you a story quick. It's about this. This is the Beethoven Brain CBD. So what makes this unique is, first of all, well, my friend gave me a call, and he wanted me to, get into the CBD. And he said, you like it. You've been using CBD. And I'm like, yeah, I've been using it. And I was using a different blend. And he said, well, here's what's different. Okay, now my friend's a genius. He's in his 20s. He built a company that was the fastest growing company in the industry that he was in, sold it for $50 million this year. He's sunk almost $1 million into this manufacturing for the CBD. And he said, listen, the reason why ours is different is that our blend uses physics to extract a full 100% of the plant. So it doesn't use any chemicals. It doesn't use anything abrasive or anything that would cause any impurities. In the blend, it extracts the full amount, the full 100% of the plant. And so that is important to me. And we got 5,000 milligrams. So it is CBD, it is pure, and it is awesome. Try it out. I think you'll like it, and I'll let results speak for themselves.
The father of lies is the father of the sons of men. And there it is. So why would I step into that venue? And why would I bring my value to the table from a position of having no value, no portance, no port to stand on? See, I'm not on terra firma this way. You have no port to stand on if you're not anchored and rooted in truth. So I'm not going to do that. That's a losing proposition. You're defeated before you even begin. Haven't you ever tried to bail someone out time and time again, only to realize that the minute you took your human will into the picture, that you have interfered with, at best, God's perfecting law of adjustment that can operate wholly and entirely separate from you? So at best, you've interfered with a divine law. And I have done that quite many times. But see, this is a new way of operating. This is a new consciousness. This consciousness is ascended already. And so I step into the fact, and I witness the fact of life that knows no counterfeit, and therefore there never existed a counterfeit version of that which calls itself life, and therefore there was never any crime, wrongdoing, any problem, because that counterfeit version of life never occurred. And you say, well, this is absurd. This is the most loony thing you've ever said, Matthew. And I say to you, it's the thing that works. God's ways are not man's ways. So when I resolved years of resentment and strife that had been low level accumulating within my relationship with Sabrina, and not just Sabrina but others as well, because I brought this new consciousness into the picture, is when I knew that there never was a problem, that none of that stuff ever happened, because that counterfeit version of life never had the capacity to operate outside of any position of fact. And where there's a fact, there's no confusion, there's no strife, there's no problem. And so there lies the mystery. And so when I do this, I wait for the confirmation, and the confirmation is the settlement in the heart. I'm settling the transaction in the heart. So in my heart, I bring peace. I bring peace into the picture. And when I bring the peace into the picture, it quiets the human five senses. And it silences the accuser. And then it begins to reveal the life divine that is wholly and entirely separate from the dream of the mortal sense of flesh. God never authored a living being that contains His spark of life, divine love itself, being capable of causing conflict within its own members. And you see, right now I'm working this out. I am working it out the way that Christ on the earth, that we know as the living Son of God, worked out the problems that were brought the same way that they come to all of us, because that Christ is a consciousness that you are in. You are in it. The living imagination is the Spirit of God that is eternal. You are emerging from within it. You don't have it because you're a meat sack that suddenly became conscious. You exist in the mind of God. That mind is a spiritual, eternal fact of life. And the Son of God, that means descendant of God, the one that God sent into the world, that you know as Christ, is the living imagination. And so God sent imagination into the world, and suddenly you show up somewhere in time and space. And allegedly you came out of a birth canal, and you're this corpse now, corporeal 5 sense creature that is at best an atom dream of dust and mortality. But is that ever, for one moment, the truth of life? No. So therefore, what are all the claims that come from that sense that has no life? Every claim is moot. It's an empty claim of error. That's why in the Gnostic gospel of truth, when the world became very agitated as the Christ emerged, because that's what happens, because it comes to destroy. Christ came to destroy the world of lies, the error. Didn't come to save the world, it came to destroy it. But as it became agitated and persecuted, that was Satan that died on the cross. That was the Son of Men. And the Son of God, the living imagination, became the Redeemer that set you free. And yet you thought you were just this creature that has an imagination. But the true story is way more epic than you've given credit for. You're emerging from the living imagination. And when you take graven images and you put them before your imagination, that is the Holy Spirit, because it's whole, it's complete. It's whole, it's complete. It bears all within itself. Think for one moment outside of your reasoning. And it completes all, even as quick as the speed of thought. But when you contemplate that which is strife, that which is temporal, that which appears to exist outside of good, God, the God in your life is the eternal good. It's the harmony. It's the love that fills all human needs. When you contemplate outside of that, you have accepted the position of the disposition of the derivative self, and you have put yourself through your own doing into the law of sin and death. And the way out is to begin to consume everything in your world with light. You begin to devour matter with light. You devour it, and you devour it, and that is why Christ came to destroy the world. You are now the Christ. You have received the bread of life. Now it is your turn to destroy the world by bringing the light to that dark world of error and superstitious materialism. And as you behold the light within all, it destroys every pocket of ignorance that shows up, because it's showing up to be qualified by perfection. And now you know the real versus the counterfeit. So let's explore the technique I talked about, and let's bring this into the technique so you can just use it in a way that brings you something. See, a technique is something for your mind. It's to distract your mind, okay? The only reason we use techniques is because it's a way to distract your mind while we slip underneath it the truth. So a technique that works is one that distracts your mind while you slip a truth underneath, like doing this crap, tapping on your face. I remember I was at a release technique seminar, and Larry Crane was hilarious. Some lady kept tapping on her face the whole time, and he goes, "Would you please stop pounding your face while I'm talking?" Because it's ridiculous. Okay, it's ridiculous, but that's the point. That's why it works. Because it's ridiculous. Because what is ridiculous? It's operating outside of it's breaking the pattern of what you know. And it's causing something to cause your mind to what the hell's going on here? Your mind is all stuck on it. And then meanwhile, you're inserting underneath it the command. That's why it works. I mean, get real. Because the meridian system in the body, of course, yes, I understand that. But that's all just ideas too. What we're talking about here is why it works. The techniques work because they subdue fear, and fear is reasoning. So what they do is they take the strong man and they bind him in the house, and they allow the house to be taken over because they bind the strong man, which is your conscious mind, by giving it a bunch of crap to do. And therefore, as you're doing all that crap, you're focused on all the doing, you're slipping the command underneath it. And the command, the intention, if it bears any weight of truth within itself, begins to manifest its own nature in your life. So you subdue the strong man and slip in the intention. But what's unique about this technique is that it has to do with the very sequence of timing itself. It has to do with the meme of the day, which is the TikTok, 8-second attention span. That's all people have. So what I'm doing is I'm teaching you how to operate within your own attention span awareness of 4 seconds before your reasoning kicks in, because when reasoning kicks in, that's the strong man. So I'm teaching you how to bind the strong man on a metronome timing, because all of your conscious focus has to be put on the metronome timing. And it is absurd. That's why it works. So, now that I bring to consciousness a problem, I bring the person in my world that is experiencing the problem, that is in need of the setting free, and I begin to track it and calibrate it every 4 seconds. As I'm thinking of the problem, I'm going to stop myself every 4 seconds, and I'm going to know a divine truth. The truth here is that there is freedom. So the truth here is that freedom is inherent within spirit and can never be taken away. So I'm going to cue that up as I count the metronome and insert that thought in the gap between every space. Tick, 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 about 30 seconds, tick, 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 tick. So what I'm going to tell you that I'm doing is I am engaging with the propensity for me to kick in my reasoning mind, and I'm making it fully conscious so that it can no longer operate. I'm bringing that darkness to the light. I'm making the unconscious series circuitry patterning of who, what, when, where, why, and how, thinking of how to get from problem to solution. I'm bringing it fully conscious by tracking it. I'm going to calibrate it. So pay close attention. I'm thinking of the person with the problem. For as long as it troubles my heart, I use this method until my heart is no longer troubled. So the problem bears the fruit of loss of freedom in someone's life. So we can look at the truth within that situation and know that life bears freedom within itself and can never be taken away. And life is not capable of committing error in order to be punished by consequence of error, because all life is in spirit and never material. So the claim against life is defeated because that life never had an ounce of life. Because the flesh that walks the earth doesn't have an ounce of intelligence, life, or anything of authority within itself. It never existed. So I know that truth. I know the truth, but it's not in my heart yet. So now I begin to calibrate, and I'm going to bring it to my heart by subduing the strong man. And that's that doubting Thomas mind that wants to destroy every creation. It's the thief that came to rob, steal, and kill. It's the mind of this world, Satan. Every 4 seconds, 3 to 4 seconds, it comes in with reasoning and tries to steal your blessing. Taking thought for its own life, the willful act of disobedience that puts you under the law of sin and death. So I'm going to bind and subdue that. Tick, 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 tick. The whole time I'm meditating on the truth. I know that God is all and that freedom is inherent in spirit. Tick, 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 tick. Now, if you really want to get good at this, learn how to play in the pocket. Like a good musician, learn how to play in the pocket. I like to play just slightly behind the beat. Just look at the work of any great guitar player and you'll see that they play slightly behind the beat. And all instruments are percussion and everything is vibration, so it's all vibration. So watch this. Every 4 seconds when I say tick, tick, right before the tick comes in, slightly behind the beat, I redirect my conscious focus on meditating on spirit as free within itself eternally. Tick, 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 tick. Now you see, after about 17 seconds, like Abraham Hicks says, I give it 30 seconds because why not? I've already released my intention. I've already set the vibrational shift in motion. But now I've got to get it into my heart. So now I do the ABC break process. Snap my fingers, it is not it. In other words, the mind is not it. Can't get there from there. So could I allow for just this moment things to be exactly as they are? In other words, if the situation never changed for just this moment, can I be okay with it? Yes. And if the situation never changed for just this split-second moment, could I be okay with it? Yes. Good. Now I've detached my control to be in control. Now, go to a place of peace. Well, consequently, here I am again, back in my place of peace. This field right here is what I call my field of dreams, because this is where I come to do my meditations, and this is where I find my joy and my peace. So I occupy it fully. Now what I'm doing is I'm bringing that frequency of peace into my beingness. I am emerging from it. I am stepping into the present of the present and emerging as the peace. And that's your power, your peace. It allows God to fight your battles. Good. Now I want to go to the other side, to the solution consciousness. And this is where I emerge with the living Christ, the human imagination, where I exist from, and I come to bring the finest wine to the stony pots. So this is where I witness. Eyewitness. This is my eyewitness report. See, I'm going to overwrite the reports of my five senses with a true eyewitness report of what is eternally true in the mind of God, and I'm going to cite that with my human intellect. I'm going to make contact with it. So I see the joy on God's child. I see the freedom in God's child. I see the happiness that abounds in God's child. Remember, I'm looking back as if this happened 5 years ago. So I'm distancing myself from disbelief and allowing it to be true. Now I know that God knows it to be true, because God has always and will always be free and happy and joy-filled and prosperous and abundant. And all of the fruits of the Spirit are contained within this person, because the real expression of God can only be of the same mind of God, therefore the same consequence of God. And that mind could never have taken an action that comes against harmony itself. I am witnessing it. I am the eyewitness report of it. Now in this space, I have the resonance in my heart. Now I'm going to calibrate the new calibration, just so that I can track it. I'm going to track the new calibration. So at every moment when I feel a sense of reasoning trying to kick in, I will metronome time that and shoot down the propensity to take thought for it, because I know it's already settled in my heart. Tick. 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 Now you notice the slowing down? That means that there's a vast amount of stillness in this space now. You see the waves that brought the turbulence into my consciousness that emerged from the chaotic static in the heart that derived itself as a false report of a person who was being outside of the will and harmony of the divine plan that never changed, that never breaks apart from itself. That's been destroyed. It's destroyed. I changed the timing, because timing is also frequency. I'm in another frequency. That's a parallel universe. And see, this is how I track universes. This is how you track where you are. Now you associate a color to it. You associate a color to this tracking. And that's your trigger. That's just your trigger, your anchor trigger. That's the one that anchors you to the terra firma of this new vibration. You're anchoring your ship there. The color for me is always golden light, because the golden light is the meditation that I bring to all of the trouble that I qualify it with. And it always ends up with calibrating in this still space, because this still space is the calibration of the solution of all problems. And see, I'm teaching you how to calibrate into the beingness within yourself that is the solution to all problems, so that you can remember. That you can remember. And then you can walk in it, because you're training yourself to occupy this state. You are conditioning yourself through the technique. You're using timing to alter frequency, to condition yourself to occupy the presence of peace, harmony, and divine love. And in the process, you're qualifying everything in your world, and you're consuming it into the light. You're bringing the fire of God. That's what it means. The fire of God is the light that destroys all error. That's what it means. And therefore you are now a master. Funny that I grew up watching He-Man, Masters of the Universe. And the lie was that all the strength was in the physical, so they always mix the lie with the truth. Well, you are the master of the universe, but it's not in your physical. See, that's the power of Grayskull. That's the void of light and the skull and bones. It's all symbology, it's all right there. But we are of the light, we are the children of the light. And for you that digest this content, you can never unknow it. So once you've received it, your world will become agitated, and it will stir about. But as it persecutes you, you qualify it all in the light, and you perfect it.
Listen, there are two types of people in this world. People who believe they can, and people who believe they can't. I'm pretty sure you already know who I am. You see this, Mocaine. This is my secret. You know, probably you never heard of it, because you are swinging around your local coffee shop and congregate with the sheep. Bah, bah. What's wrong with you anyway? So what you waiting for? Go on mocaine.com and little Tony will ship you some little baggies, risk-free, to try out. You should be killing it. You should be living like me. You should be living like me. But you ain't, right? You're missing this. This is the secret. This is the fuel to complete your mission. I'm putting powder all over the streets. I don't want to hear any more excuses, okay? You work for me now. I want you to be my customer. Go on mocaine.com and do the Mocaine Miracle Morning. I'm not gonna ask you again. I'm not gonna ask you again. So good.